right, guys. Well, listen, welcome back to the Paul Jr. podcast. It's been fun. I'm enjoying this. I feel like I have a lot to say, and so I figured I'd get right into it. You know, it's funny. I don't think people really understand what we do. I say we. It's me and my wife who have this business, and we work together. I think people are just used to seeing me build motorcycles. The creative process, obviously, they see us being creative. The car, you know, designing logos, going back to the OCC days. I mean, the creative gift is obviously a big aspect of when people look at me, they see that creative gift. And I'm very grateful for it. And But really what they don't see is how me and Rachel work together, because she has the same gifting as me. We have the same we operate on the same level of creativity, which is kind of unique, to be honest with you. I don't know of any other husband and wife teams that operate the way we do. And I'm only saying that because this is what we do for our livelihood. And just to give you for instance, more recently, we had an opportunity to potentially work with the New York Giants. Now, the New York Giants have been a big part of my life since I was a kid, going back to the Lawrence Taylor days. And so what an impact, let's just say LT had on my life as a young man playing football. He was the earmark. You know, there was a few others, but no one really stood out like Lawrence Taylor. And more recently, through a certain situation, Lawrence Taylor has partnered up with a company that basically does like trade show build outs. Well, this company was looking for creative ideas for the Giants' 100th season. So in 1925, the New York Football Giants, that's their official name, became what they are. And for 100 years now, they've had seasons and all kinds of players and really an impact dynamically on the sport of football, right? Because they're one of the oldest teams. So they're celebrating their 100 seasons, and there seems to be a bit of a loss as to the creative direction, how they would go. Now, every year the Giants have like a fan fest, I think they call it. But this coming year, they're going to add this 100 seasons. So they were looking for ideas. So they came to us, and me and my wife we took a meeting at Giant Stadium. O.J. Anderson was there, as well as Lawrence Taylor, which was pretty amazing because I'm sitting in the Giants boardroom with a couple of heroes. And they proceeded to lay out what they're looking for. They don't really have the creative direction, but they were talking about some of the storied history of the Giants. And then after that, we went over to the stadium and we kind of did like a walk around the stadium. And it's just massive, vast space. That's actually a little bit overwhelming, even for creatives like myself and my wife. So we got done with that meeting and we got home, and I was feeling a little bit at a loss, but I had a couple ideas. And so we started having a conversation, and I said to my wife, I said, you know, if this experience doesn't make me feel like Lawrence Taylor made me feel as a young person, then they're failing at doing the job of giving this 100 years of legacy. And then we started down the road of the creative process, and what we came up with is pretty remarkably strong. Nobody was thinking in the direction we were going. We pitched it to the production company who would help us execute it, and they loved it. And I think in another 2 weeks, we're going to be pitching the Giants. So this is the kind of creative we do. The way we looked at the whole project was like a giant motorcycle build, because it's all in theme. It's talking about everything important about the Giants, the legacy of the G-men, things of that nature. And our idea is to walk people through what we call fan tunnels. So the players would come through the tunnels all these years. We want to create fan tunnels that wrap around the stadium, and each tunnel represents 25 years of Giant history. So you walk through the middle of it, and it tells the storied legacy of the Giants over 100 years. We're going to feed in some audio and things of that nature. And so this would actually wrap around, and at the end we would have like a big showing and the guys would be signing autographs. So we really put this neat thing together that no one else was thinking about. And we're going to be able to pitch it to the Giants coming up. But this is the kind of range of creative that we do. It's really everything from motorcycles to build outs like that. We're working with some other companies right now doing marketing, talking about spokesperson roles, because we have that equity out there with the fans, especially with a certain age and demographic. So we rep certain brands really well, and there's a good synergy. So it's getting pretty exciting because this stuff is sort of developing for us, and we're realizing, hey, we'll always do the bikes, we'll always do the cars, but the truth is, we're all about marketing and design, and we think outside the box. And with the more we move along, the more we realize that there really aren't a lot of people quite like us with our 1-2 punch combination.
A lot of this is storytelling, whether it's a bike, whether it's a car, whether it's the Giants, right? I mean, that's what
so here's the thing about marketing and advertising. We've done it in the way of motorcycles, but unequivocally, it is all about storytelling. If you're not telling the story of the client, you are failing miserably. I can't stand it. Me and my wife see like campaigns. We're like, how these people probably got paid $1 million and they miss the mark horribly. We see it day in and day out. So we're very sensitive to like that kind of stuff. So yes, you come in, same thing with the bike build. Listen to the client, and that's what we did. We went in, sat down with the Giants. They told us what they were and what they were looking for. They even said we might have a little bit more budget if we thought the idea was fantastic. So you start, now, well, that's what you want. Come on, we're going to mail this thing in. Let's go big. And then we could go back from there, right? And so unquestionably, it's storytelling. Think about American Chopper. Okay, we had the family dynamic. Everybody loved it. It was unique. Let's just say that. It's what really grabbed people. But when it came to the creative process, most of these people that watched our show, the fan base, the major audience out there, what, 1% were bikers? I bet you it's not even 1%. So this massive audience, what are they relating to? They're relating to the theme, the storytelling. That's it. We sell them on the creative process. We tell the client's story through our creative process, whether we do it for a pitch, for some marketing idea, creating logos and everything else, or we do it for Major League Baseball, or the Yankees, or the Giants, or the Black Widow for that matter, because it was not for anyone but me, but we still sold you this theme, this story. We told the story of the process. You see what I mean?
When would you say the shift happened from, okay, yeah, we do motorcycles to we can really do anything as long as it's marketing and storytelling? When did you realize you can cover almost anything?
You know, I really pressed into the idea that we can do anything from a marketing and advertising standpoint, no matter what it is, because it's just practical application of a gift. See what I mean? And I think that really came to fruition when me and my father parted ways at the end of '08. Everybody knows the meme and the big blowout where I threw the chair. That caused me to go into business for myself. That caused me to have a 1-year non-compete with my father, and I had to kind of branch into product design. I don't want to say had to, but I couldn't build bikes for a year, so I had to figure out how to make a living. And certainly that's when it started to kind of come together a little stronger for us, and we realized, man, we're good at other things, you know? And then that's when me and my wife began to work together for the first time. When we started Paul Jr. Designs, we started in my house, in our house together. So we cleared out this room, we moved the couches out, we put desks in, we hired a kid who could do the computer stuff, and we went to work and we designed the road trip grill for Coleman. And that was the start of it. Then I started having more ideas. I had all these cooler ideas, and we sold them like 30 cooler ideas. They just bought them because they didn't want anyone else to use them. And so, you know, that's when we realized, look, in combination, we can put our ideas together and then put them out there in an articulate enough way for a company to buy what it is that we're offering. See what I mean? We package things up really well. This is an area where Rachel's fantastic at organizing, putting the thoughts and ideas together in a visual representation or a presentation, because it's the bike I could build and show you at the end, but when it comes to this type of stuff, you have to show clients this is what you're buying. So I think that unequivocally, that's what happened. When me and my father parted ways, it kind of opened up a new door for me. Now, keep in mind, when that first happened, that was one of the hardest things I had to deal with in my life, because previous to that, I was so invested in Orange County Choppers from the standpoint of creative and building and logo and all the bike designs and personnel and ownership and, all these things, they kind of become a part of your personality. So at the same time I was breaking away from what I knew most, I was starting to build on really what would become the future of Paul Jr. Designs.
So beyond even the projects you've worked with, another area, and you mentioned a little bit, is keynotes and speaking. Because here you are, Paul, this global, face, and people know you.
Yep.
But you also have this voice. So talk about some of those speaking engagements, how that's something even you've gotten into recently.
Yeah, and more recently I started doing more speaking engagements. Recently did a keynote for a company out in Florida, and that was stressful, but it was really good because I try and over prepare for that stuff, but then when I get to it, I realize that I have so much going on in my head that I've not talked about, that so much, I guess I would call it experience, or I almost feel a little bit like I've lived two lives because of the nature of American Chopper and what it's afforded us. And certainly from a creative standpoint, I could speak to the builds and to the process. And I think people are super interested in that. And so, yeah, speaking engagements have really become something that I'm doing more and more of. I'm also a little older, right? So I'm 50. I got 25 years of experience under my belt as an entrepreneur, as a designer, as a creative, as a marketing person. And so I understand the ins and outs of things. And I think my perspective is much different than most people's, I like to say we were forged in fire. I know that sounds kind of cliche, but, working through the process under insurmountable pressures creatively for almost my whole adult life because of the show and the time frame and the unveils and the time constraints were unbelievable. But you actually get formed creatively the way you operate because you're under so much pressure for so long. And I feel like that's had a really big impact on how I function and how I move forward in the way I think. It's on the fly, it's in the moment, and you think from a high level of branding and way outside the box.
With the amount of stress that you dealt with during the run for American Chopper, does that make decisions you make nowadays easier? Because you've been under you're dealing with global brands here, showcasing projects built for that.
Yeah, certainly American Chopper and that pressure and experience and working with these globally iconic brands has made life easier for me now. And it's more because of the confidence it builds in you over time. When you're able to hit home runs time after time with your team, and you represented and presented no drawings for the project that you're promising on, and then when you do your unveil, you exceed the expectations of companies like Cadillac and Microsoft, it puts you in a different place of confidence in your skill set and what your team can produce. So yeah, certainly American Chopper kind of formed the direction of Paul Jr. Designs forever.
You gave us some insight, Paul, into the Giants build. I think a lot of people are like, we're going to get Paul back on TV. We got this podcast. I don't know if you can give us anything in the works.
Yeah, certainly I would say what are the number one questions people come in here, they ask online, when are you coming back on television? It's been a little while now. I think our last special aired in 20. But, I don't know. I think that we're kind of ready to get back on television. I feel like maybe the things that I just spoke about with me and Rachel, my son Hudson, I would say the new Teutul dynamic. That's not to take anything from the past, and it certainly isn't to take anything from my father. But, I'm the father now, and I feel like we have a lot to offer. And I think the relatability of what we would put out there with me and Rachel and Hudson and all these things we have going on, it would be off the charts. Currently, we really don't share it with anyone except for maybe now when I'm talking about it on the podcast, but it's not anything we really put out on social. So this is a good outlet to start that ball rolling. But we are right now in a development deal with a production company. We're actually shooting a couple days from now to start working on a sizzle. We've already presented the concept. Loved by the production. They love the concept. They've never seen anything like it. We have a pretty thorough layout of what this show would look like as far as the content, as well as the form of the show, the way the show would roll out. And so I'm pretty excited about that. I think that could be big because I want to show the audience out there how we get to the end game of all this creative. Yeah, we'll build bikes and we'll build cars, but we also are going to do exterior. We're going to do experiential build outs, things of that nature, like I'm talking about with the Giants. And we'll be working with some other companies. I think I could roll pickleball into that. I'm getting ready to launch a pickleball line because why not? I'm spending all this time doing it anyway, and I'm passionate about it. And we have some ideas for it. We're designing a pickleball paddle right now. So I feel like we're pretty dynamic. And I think people would probably like to see that in more of a television content aspect. So that's my short answer.
So we got to stay tuned.
Yeah, you know what? You just got to stay tuned. I think we're getting there.
Very cool. Speaking of the dynamic, of course, everyone knows the bikes, but here we have one of your most recent builds, this beautiful 1939 Lincoln Zephyr.
Yep.
We're rolling out content now on your social regarding this, but what's that like when you look at this thing and everything that went into it? Just a totally unique project.
Yeah, so we're building this car right now through our social media. We're rolling out all the content. Basically, for American Collectors Insurance, they trusted us with this build. 1939 Lincoln Zephyr 3-window coupe, my favorite car of all time. And I've always wanted to do to this car exactly what we did for this build. So it's good. It's a different creative outlet. I got to be honest with you, man, the cars are tough. I'm used to bikes. I could do a bike in 8 weeks with the right team working around the clock, but there's almost no way to do that with a car, and my attention span's not that great. I like to get a project done and move on to the next project. So I would say that this car stretched me for sure, but what a rewarding project. I mean, I just love the way it came out. We got those beautiful sweeping fenders. The car looks amazing. The paint color and the team we had involved, I just feel like we really did a good job on it. So I'm excited for people to see it come to fruition, the creative process, I mean. And, what can I say? It's sitting here in the showroom. And for people who want to come down, they could come see the car in person. It's looking good in the showroom right now.
All the bikes you've done these cars. Do you have a preference, or is there something else that you haven't touched yet that you're like, man, I really want to get my hands on that?
Yeah, I've built a few cars. I've built, I don't know how many bikes, but a lot. But yeah, certainly I have aspirations for other things, maybe bigger projects, like I said, environmental build outs, but also maybe some art. I have had ideas for artwork for a long time now. I've just not really executed it. And what I like about art is it's something for people that, my bikes aren't super obtainable. I mostly exclusively build for corporations, and that's by design because I'm selling them advertising or a way to advertise their brand. But art is something you could come in, purchase, and potentially hang it on your wall at home or at your beach house or whatever. And so that's something that we're looking at, maybe getting a little bit more into, and it's right in our wheelhouse. I always like to take inspiration from other things that I've done because I operate in theme. Theme is the way I think, so just applying that theme to other aspects of life is, I think would win.
Now, what kind of artwork are we dealing with here?
I would probably do art in the way of metals, copper, aluminum, certain applications with that stuff that would have a strong aesthetic appeal and be different from anything you might see out there. Something that takes an artisan hand to build, that type of thing. Unique art.
Very cool. I want to go back to Rachel because even when I communicate with you guys, Rachel really is on point. Make sure that really everyone's kept in focus and in line and, organized, right?
Yes.
Being that you guys, of course, work together, but you're married. I've worked with married couples before. Sometimes that dynamic doesn't work out so well when it comes to the work side of things. Why is that so important that you guys have this dynamic when it comes to the projects, but also in your personal married life. That you don't lose that.
Yeah, I'll tell you, working together as a married couple. First of all, Rachel, what she does is like pretty much everything, and I just kind of I try and look good with her presenting these things. In other words, the way we work together is very what's the word? Symbiotic? Is that like a good word? We really complement each other. Like my weaknesses are all her strengths. We're both hyper creative, but she's able to do things that I can't do. She's just super smart. She figures stuff out. She does design great on a computer. Her ideas are brilliant. And we're able to work with each other like that, certainly from an organization standpoint, I'd be lost. I'm not great with that. I'm kind of like a messy worker, and she keeps us organized. So from that standpoint, we really complement each other. And like I said before, powerhouse all day long. I wouldn't even say that if I didn't really believe it. But it definitely poses its challenges, because it is hard to decipher when you should just be a married couple and when you should be working, because work really never ends for us, especially conversations in the car, going wherever. It does seem to consume a lot of our time. So I will say we do sometimes have a hard time finding balance with that, and it can be frustrating, and it could actually be wearing, and it could wear on the personal relationship side of it. And plus, I'm a hard person to deal with. So I'm a nice guy, but I'm a pain in the butt. And, I'm like most husbands that are probably more needy than I should be. So, there's all this dynamic going on. But I would say on an overall basis, we really work it out pretty well. And I think the biggest thing is we're best friends. Regardless, sure, we get at each other sometimes. But we're accomplishing great things together. And certainly, again, like I said, we're best friends.
We talked about your son on the last podcast, but he's getting older. He's almost 10.
Yep.
Does he have any idea or question how did Dad get all this stuff?
It's funny with my son. He's very creative. He's a great kid. He's just a good-hearted kid. He's not impressed by me at all. I got to tell you, he's like the least impressed. Kids come in here randomly and their eyes light up. He comes down here, and I think that's a pretty common thing overall. I've tried to get him to watch the show a little bit. I don't watch the show, but I've tried to play it a little bit. He'd rather go play Minecraft. I mean, really, that's so I feel like I think that aspect of it will grow. I certainly see him recognizing as he gets older the fact that I have a history in television. It's understood, but it's not. It's interesting to him, but he's not impressed by it. That's the only way I could put it. He just has no interest in learning any more about it other than I'm his dad and he's good with that. He does see people come up, especially here in the showroom. Sometimes in the summer, he'll be down here. People say certain things, and he sees that. And the older he gets, the more he understands it. But I don't know. He's a very creative kid. As far, people say, "Oh, is he going to build bikes?" You know what? Maybe I would love that. I would love for him to just be involved creatively. Like I said, I feel like we're much larger than just motorcycles as far as our ability and span. So however he might apply himself to that down the road would be great. But I honestly just care about him being his own kid, his own person. I said this one time in an interview. That's why we named him Hudson and not Paul Jr. We wanted him to be his own guy, and he really is his own person. So, and I love that about him. I really do. So we'll see for the future though, because he is getting older, and I'm going to get him to try and turn some wrenches.
All right, cool. Paul, with any amount of fame, right? In a lot of cases, and I've talked to you about this. We can see this either really make or, in a lot of cases, really break some people. Yeah. I think some people want to know, your background, the level of fame and attention you guys had. Yep. I mean, nuts, off the charts. What would you say to that? Because you were introduced in your mid-20s to all this. Yeah. It's kind of a whirlwind. How did that fame at a young age impact you, if it did at all?
Yeah, certainly I think fame is a difficult thing for people to come to terms with. We had such a phenomenon experience or a phenomenal experience or whatever you want to call it. The show was such a juggernaut that our level of fame skyrocketed so fast in the early years of American Chopper that you almost couldn't even I mean, you didn't know what was happening, frankly. And so that's not an easy thing to manage. Matter of fact, in the beginning, it threw me off a little bit. I thought it was exciting and interesting, but I also felt a little anxiety from it because all of a sudden you couldn't go anywhere to the mall or anything. Like anywhere you went, you got inundated with people. I felt like, I don't know, it threw me off a little bit, to be honest with you. Although I understood the potential financially and otherwise, and it was fun to have notoriety where everyone wants your autograph. But I certainly think that there are pitfalls to that, and you see it all the time. People burn out quick, or they just can't handle the fame. Matter of fact, I feel like we had many people that worked for us through the years that had no notoriety of their own, but attached themselves to our notoriety and couldn't handle it. So never mind being in the first position. But I guess what I would contribute staying humble, because that's all it is humility. Two is, we had a pretty tight group. We didn't go to LA, not that there's anything wrong with LA, but we stayed in Montgomery, New York, where we were always from. We always stayed tight with our friend group. All the people before fame came were the same people we hung out with. And we kept each other grounded. And also, I'm a Christian, and I feel like there's a certain moral compass I've always tried to abide by, and I feel like that has really helped me guide me through the years. I feel like God has been a big guiding force for me all these years, which has really helped keep me grounded, And I also feel like early on, I remember feeling a certain way about famous people that I really appreciated. Certain famous people, like Lawrence Taylor, for instance, like we talked about. And I even got his autograph when I was my son's age, right? I was like 9 years old, 10 years old. It was in 4th grade. I got his autograph, and I remember how he made me feel signing that thing for me. And so when fame came my way, I always tried to put myself in that position. In other words, I always tried to put myself in that person's position, and I always tried to give them attention. It wasn't always easy, especially in the early days. It was like chaos. But I always tried to look people in the eye and give them what they were looking for from me, because I felt like I was having success and I owed that to them. I think that was a big factor for me. But I think everybody's built differently. Some people are not built to handle fame. It gets to their head, they go crazy, they start to have like this idea of who they are, and then right and wrong becomes kind of like not that important. Because it's more about them than it is about doing the right thing or working within the parameters of what everyone else has to work in the confines of. You know what I'm saying? Social norms and things of that nature go out the window fast. So if you don't stay grounded, man, people get swept away in it, and it could be pretty ugly.
When things don't go right, too, right? Whether that's at work, these projects, you got your family stuff, things aren't going right. How did you always deal with that? Because you're under a lot of pressure with all these things, and things will not always go right.
Yeah. Life is a series of things not going right, and every once in a while things work out. That's been my experience, and I'll be honest, and that's not like a negative viewpoint. I feel like that's a reality, and it's all the negative and hard things that you have to overcome that really build you up to what you are. It's not the big wins. Those are fantastic. It's all the shortcomings, all the fails, all the failures. I say failing forward because that's the idea. If you could fail forward, then you're doing okay. Certainly to overcome, family issues, family dynamic issues, especially with the show being so public. But certainly if you can learn from all those things, then it just builds you up for what's next. You just got to keep moving forward. There's so many things to talk about life. I also got to be honest with you, I think for me all these years, I feel like God has given me the gift of encouragement for whatever that might mean. So I like the idea of encouraging people. I like the idea of like lifting people up, giving them like a positive message, talking about things in a very real way. I'm a very realistic person. I'm very practical, but I also always try and see the brighter side of things. Not that I don't have hard times, but I always want to try and encourage people because look at my experience. I mean, look, I didn't even know I was creative until I was 25 years old. And who would have ever knew that I would have experienced the life I've experienced up until now? But you know what? Being given an opportunity and stepping over that line, that was a hard line to step over, you know, look what can come of it.
One thing too, you brought it up, and I've never really asked you this or hear you talk about it much, but is your religion, you know?
Yep.
How big of a role has that played in your...
Oh man, I got to tell you, being a Christian from the age of 12 has been, I mean, it's been everything for me as far as the direction of my life. I think from a predestined standpoint, I don't know what people think about that, but I mean, look, I didn't know where I was going, but I knew God had something for me. And then the show hit, and that was a phenomenon. And it's so crazy because now I'm coming into the second stage of it. And I know this sounds weird, but I feel like our best years are ahead of us. It's not just a positive thought process, although I think that's strong. I really have a sense that things are going to open up again, and we're going to be able to build and capitalize on the equity of all those years of American Chopper and bring it into what's next. So I try and stay upbeat and positive. Certainly, being a Christian from an early age has been the moral direction, right? Don't get me wrong, man. I've gone right and left of that in a big ways. But certainly, you know, on an overall basis, staying the course and always getting that moral ground has been massive for me.
Well, how exactly has that helped, you know, with your religion, help you keep that ground, that direction?
Well, I think for one, when you talk about the hard times, you know, which I told, like I said before, there's way more hard times you deal with than good times. And knowing that God is in control and that He has given you a direction in your life, and you know that He is sovereign and has this predestined nature in your, there's something bigger than me out there, because some people are lost in that. Their only thing they could do is rely on themselves, and that's where it gets dark, because in and of myself I don't have it. But if I rely on Him, He's gotten me through all these things, and then when I hit big home runs, all I could do is thank Him for it. So there's always an appreciation for what God's doing in my life. All right, guys. Well, listen, thanks for tuning in to the Paul Jr. podcast and listening to me babble for all this time. And I hope to be doing more of that, to be honest with you. I think we can have some really great conversations with some really great people that hopefully will enrich your life.